In 1974, the biggest soul singer in Brazil walked into a room in Rio de Janeiro, sat down in front of a stack of blue books, and came out convinced that every human being on earth was an alien in exile. His name was Tim Maia. He was loud, enormous, foul-mouthed, a genius songwriter, the man who had single-handedly invented Brazilian soul. And within months, he would quit cocaine, quit alcohol, quit red meat, start his own record label, and pour everything he had into 2 devotional funk albums for a UFO religion almost nobody outside Brazil had ever heard of. A year later, he would walk out of the cult, broke and furious, and spend the rest of his life trying to make those albums disappear. Today, they are considered some of the greatest records ever made in Brazil, and this is how they happened. Before we go any further, I want to say something. Brazil has one of the richest music scenes on the planet. Genres that shaped jazz, hip-hop, psychedelic rock, and disco, and most of it never crossed the border. I've spent years digging into these stories, and this channel is the door. If that sounds like your kind of rabbit hole, hit subscribe. So, who is Tim Maia? If you don't know the name, here is the shortest possible version. Sebastião Rodrigues Maia was born in 1942 in a working-class neighborhood in Rio called Tijuca. As a teenager, he taught himself guitar, started a vocal group with a kid named Roberto Carlos, who would later become the biggest pop star in Latin America, and in 1959 did something almost unthinkable for a poor black kid from Tijuca. He got on a boat to the United States. He wanted to sing like Ray Charles. He wanted to be where the music was. And for about 4 years he lived in New York, washing dishes, playing in small bands, soaking up rhythm and blues, gospel, doo-wop, and the earliest rumblings of soul. And then, in 1963, it all fell apart. Tim and a group of friends got hold of a stolen car and went on a long, chaotic road trip through the American South, financing the drive with small thefts along the way. In Daytona Beach, Florida, the police pulled the car over, found marijuana inside, and arrested him. He spent months in an American jail before being put on a plane and deported back to Brazil, with nothing but the clothes he was wearing and 4 years of American soul music in his head. Back home, nobody in the Brazilian music scene sounded anything like that. Bossa Nova was still the national export. Tropicalia was a year or 2 away. Tim Maia showed up with Otis Redding in his voice and James Brown in his hips, and by the end of the decade, he had his first hit. By 1970, he was a star. By 1973, he was untouchable. Platinum albums, TV specials, a voice that could go from a whisper to a roar in the same line. He was also, by every account, a storm. Legendary drinker, legendary cocaine appetite, legendary for showing up 4 hours late to his own concerts, or not showing up at all. He was huge in every sense of the word, and that is the Tim Maia who in July of 1974 walked into a friend's house and picked up a blue book. The book was called Universo Desencanto, Universe in Disenchantment. It was written, or rather dictated, by a man named Manuel Jacinto Coelho, a former Umbanda medium in Rio, who in 1935 had started receiving what he claimed were transmissions from a higher order of intelligence. By the 70s, those transmissions had become a sprawling series of volumes and the basis of a movement called Cultura Racional, rational culture. The doctrine, very roughly, went like this. Human beings are not originally from Earth. We come from a place called the Mundo Racional, the rational world, a realm of pure energy. Through some ancient cosmic accident, we fell into matter, into this planet, into suffering and ignorance. The books, and the practice of reading them in a specific order, were the way to reconnect with that original energy and begin the journey home. Some followers also believed in flying saucers as literal vehicles of that rational energy, which is why, in most English language writing, rational culture gets described as a UFO religion. The truth on the ground is a little more layered than that, but the alien exile part is real, and it is exactly the part that hit Tim Maia like a train. He read the first volume in one sitting, He demanded to meet Manuel Jacinto Coelho. He was introduced, and he converted on the spot. And then he did something nobody in the Brazilian music industry had ever seen him do. He cleaned up. Overnight, he stopped drinking. He stopped doing cocaine. He stopped eating red meat. He started wearing all white. He showed up to appointments on time. On time, for Tim Maia, was its own kind of miracle. And he decided that every song he recorded from that moment on would carry the message of rational culture to the people of Brazil. His record label, Polydor, thought he had lost his mind. They did not want devotional funk about cosmic energy and exiled souls. They wanted hits. So Tim Maia did something else nobody had really done before in Brazil. He started his own label. He called it Saroma, from the first letters of his full name, Sebastião Rodrigues Maia. It's often described as the first independent record label in Brazilian history. And while historians will argue about that detail, what is not up for argument is that it was a working artist, at the peak of his commercial power, walking away from the majors to release exactly the music he wanted, on his own terms, in 1975, in Brazil, under a military dictatorship. That alone is extraordinary. In the summer of 1974, inside the RCA studios in Rio, Tim Maia recorded what he intended to be a massive double album of rational funk. Instead, in early 1975, Saroma put out two separate records, Tim Maia Rationale Volume 1, and later that year, Volume 2. The covers were minimal, clinical, almost institutional. Titles in block letters, references to the doctrine, no glamour shots, no sex. And the music. The music is the strange, beautiful part. Because Tim Maia did not make boring religious music. He made some of the hardest, funkiest, most soulful tracks of his entire career, and then put lyrics on top of them about reading the book, about remembering where you came from, about the universe being a disappointment, and the only way out being upward. There is a song called Imunização Racional, Rational Immunization, that sounds like Curtis Mayfield meeting Fela Kuti on a beach in Rio. There is Bom Senso. There is Energia Racional. And there is the track that would, decades later, give the whole story its English name. A slow, aching, almost gospel ballad that translates as, "Nobody can live forever." He gave copies away on the street. He handed them to strangers. He wanted the message to spread. The albums sold modestly. The critics mostly ignored them. And then, in 1976, something broke. The details are still debated. Some accounts say Tim Maia caught Manuel Jacinto Coelho in a contradiction. Others say he simply woke up one morning and stopped believing. But whatever happened, he left the cult as violently as he had joined it. And he turned on the records. He ordered them pulled from stores. He tried to buy back every copy he could find. He refused, for the rest of his life, to talk about them in interviews without getting angry. As far as Tim Maia was concerned, Rationale Volume 1 and Volume 2 were a mistake he wanted history to forget. History had other plans. Tim Maia went back to drinking, back to cocaine, back to being the chaotic, brilliant, impossible giant he had always been. He kept making great records. He kept being a star. In 1998, at the age of 55, he collapsed on stage during a concert in Niterói and died a few days later of heart failure, his body worn out by decades of everything. And then, very slowly, the Rationale albums started coming back. Bootleg copies circulated among Brazilian collectors in the 80s. CD reissues in 2006 finally put them in front of a new generation. And in 2012, a small New York label called Luaka Bop, founded by David Byrne of Talking Heads, released a compilation called Nobody Can Live Forever, the existential soul of Tim Maia, drawing heavily from the Rationale sessions. For a lot of people outside Brazil, that was the first time they heard him. Critics lost their minds. Musicians from London to Los Angeles started quoting him as an influence. The albums he had tried to destroy became, officially, some of the greatest soul records ever made anywhere. A Brazilian master, at his absolute peak, pouring his whole self into songs for a religion he would spend the rest of his life denying. Here is what I think about when I listen to Rationale now. Tim Maia believed, for about 18 months, that he was an alien in exile, that the universe had made a mistake, that matter was a prison, and that the only real work a human being could do was to try to remember the way home. He was wrong about a lot of things, probably. He was definitely wrong about some of the specifics of rational culture, but he was not wrong about the feeling. Anyone who has ever heard "nobody can live forever" in the middle of the night, in a language they don't speak, and felt something lift, knows exactly what he was trying to say. He just happened to say it funkier than almost anyone in history. If you want more stories like this, Brazilian giants the English-speaking world is only starting to catch up to, click the video on your screen right now. I've got a whole channel of them, and subscribe so the next one finds you.